Today's class is going to focus on tables. So we're doing Unit 3. We're seeing tables. And what I want to talk about is the difference between absolute and relative values. So the instructions tell us to discuss meaningful patterns that we see in graphs because they don't want us to simply describe the information from left to right. That's really boring. Nobody wants to read that. At least we have to add some kind of value in terms of describing some patterns that we see. So one of the ways to do this is to look for and notice differences between absolute and relative values. That's often what the patterns are. But you have to know what to look for, how to find it, and how to describe it. So this doesn't come up just in tables. It comes up in pie charts, it comes up in bar charts. It's just often easier to spot in a table. Okay, so this is not an IELTS example, but it'll help us understand what we're talking about. So this table shows the difference between shopping mall sales versus profitability. So the difference between absolute and relative value is the difference between total sales per store and total sales per square foot. So why is that important? Because a huge store might sell a lot, but a small store might sell a lot more per square foot if it's better managed, for example, or if it's in a denser neighborhood, right? So here's some real figures that I found online for some big shopping malls. So Yorkdale Shopping Centre, 2 million square feet, has nearly $4 billion in sales. It's obviously not during COVID, but I found the numbers for 2018. Eaton Centre, also the same size as Yorkdale, but 3.1 billion. West Edmonton Mall, 3.8 million square feet. So it's basically twice the size of Yorkdale and Eaton Centre, 2.9 billion in sales. Square One, Mississauga, again, 2 million square feet, 2 billion in sales. And for comparison, Ivanhoe Centre in Edmonton, 0.9 million square feet, 1 billion in sales. Okay, so roughly speaking, we don't need calculators for this. What are the sales per square foot at Yorkdale?
We have to divide 3.8 billion.
Almost 2 billion
Yeah.
per square feet.
That's too much. That's way too many zeros.
1 point something.
So if you're going from billion to million, how many extra zeros is that? You know, why don't we start with Ivanhoe Centre? This might be a nice little warm-up one because it's pretty simple. Okay, Ivanhoe Centre, let's round it to 1 million square feet, and it's $1 billion in sales. So how many dollars per square foot?
100? We have to divide it in the square feet.
So you're dividing one by one, it's just the zeros.
Yep.
1 million times what gives you $1 billion? How many millions are in a... Sorry?
100?
No, that would be 100 million. Million times 100 is 100 million.
6 zeros.
Right, but how many million? 1,000 million is a billion. Just like 1,000,000 is a million, 1,000 million is a billion. Okay, so Ivanhoe Centre, sales are $1,000 per square foot per year. Okay, so we'll say 1,000 per square foot per year. Okay, what about Yorkdale?
$1.9.
Let's round it. Let's say it's 4 billion. Because on the exam, you're not going to have a calculator, so we might as well round now.
2,000 per square feet.
Per square foot, good. I mean, just gonna do this, per square foot.
How did you do that, John?
4 billion divided by 2 million equals 2,000.
Okay, so you said like 1,000 millions equals 1 billion?
Correct.
Okay.
There's 1,000 millions in a billion. So
Okay.
here, so this is, I just rounded this to 1. 1 million, 1 billion, it's a difference of 1,000, so that's 1,000 per square foot.
Okay.
And every store, every retailer, by the way, calculates profit this way. Costco, Walmart, they all know exactly how many dollars they make per square foot. Okay, so Yorkdale, 2,000 bucks per square foot per year. What about Eaton Centre? Let's just round it to 3 billion.
1,500?
Yeah.
1,500.
Okay, how about West Edmonton Mall?
$1,300 something. 1,300.
It will be a value, negative value.
No, it's not going to be negative.
Negative 1,000.
1,600.
The size is big. It's not a negative value, but size is big and they are earning less.
0.00 something.
0.75.
All right, so who's got the actual answer? Who's not guessing? Who knows the answer? This is like 3,000 divided by 4. What's 3,000 divided by 4?
Oh, I need a calculator.
No, you don't.
That is 0.8.
No, put the-
0.8 thousand.
What's 3,000 divided by 4? You have 3,000 bucks and you've got 4 kids. You've got
It's less than
750.
700 something.
750.
750. Okay. Sorry, it's hard to write with a mouse. And then square 1.
1,000.
1,000 bucks a square foot. Okay. So what do we learn from doing this exercise? So you see here that
You have nice cities.
yeah. So which mall is the largest? Let's say West Edmonton Mall. It's by far the biggest mall in Canada. Twice as big as Eaton Centre or Yorkdale, but it's the least profitable mall out of all of them. Right? It's even in third place in terms of earnings, but this is the least profitable mall of all 5 of these. Okay. Square One, Ivanhoe, these are identical in terms of profitability. They make the same amount of money per square foot. Okay, Eaton Centre is in 2nd place, and Yorkdale, by far, is Canada's most profitable shopping centre.
So technically, they will give this calculations or no? We have to do it.
No, they'll never give this.
We have to calculate and then we have to interpret.
Yeah. If you don't do this kind of thing, then it's hard to develop your response because it's often hard to identify meaningful comparisons. So we're going to see this in detail today. But for now, this is just an exercise to show you how it's done. Okay, so this is the difference between total sales and sales per square foot. Total sales, when I'm talking about absolute values, that would be total sales. This is like a raw number. Relative values, they're called relative because they're related to other things. Relative values are useful for comparisons, not absolute values. If you just go by absolute values, then you don't know which of these malls is the most profitable. Because the fact that something makes the most money as a raw number doesn't mean it is the most profitable. That happens to be true here, but it's often not true. Let's look at another example. I'm just going to delete the annotations. Okay. So here are the numbers, the calculations. If you missed how we did it in the first place, the calculations are here. Let's look at another example. It's the significance of a wage increase. So let's say employee A makes $10 an hour. Let's say employee A gets an increase to $15 an hour. Then you've got another employee B, who originally made $20 an hour and then also got a raise to $25 an hour. So employee A went from 10 to 15, employee B went from 20 to 25. So if you just describe this difference in absolute terms, you're going to get this. Employee A got a $5 pay increase. Employee B also got a $5 pay increase. So that's not useful for making comparisons. You need the relative difference. So our formula for doing this is to divide the first value by the difference. Okay. So $5, $10, it's 0.5, which is a 50% pay increase for employee A. For employee B, it's $5 over the 20 they were originally getting, which is a 0.25 or 25% pay increase. Okay. So employee A, that same $5 pay increase is twice as much. It represents twice as big an increase for employee A. Okay. So that's why you need to do this kind of basic math for these kinds of comparisons. Don't worry about precision too much. Use words like roughly, approximately, slightly more than, slightly less than. If you don't know that it's a precise calculation, just use any of those words and you're going to be completely fine. It roughly doubled. It more than doubled. The value was slightly less than double. Okay. You can do these kind. Yep, go ahead.
So it isn't the difference divided by the first value?
So you find the difference first,
Yeah, and then you divide it by the first value, right?
Or you divide the first value by that difference. Okay, because it's the difference and how
Yeah.
much it goes into the first value. And then the same difference, how much it goes into the second value.
Okay.
So we're going to look at this, this table that deals with Fairtrade label coffee and bananas. Can everyone see it okay?
Yes, it's clear.
Yes.
Okay, so before we look at
Yes.
the model response, let's just take a look at the table and see what we can see from it. So Fairtrade, if anyone doesn't know what that means, if you go to Second Cup, for example, or Metro for groceries, you'll see Fairtrade label, very often it's chocolate.
Yeah.
And if you read what it says that the workers are paid a living wage regardless of the commodity prices. Because workers, like farmers who grow commodities, coffee and bananas, nobody cares about the brand of coffee and bananas, right? Like huge buyers, they just buy the stuff by the ton. It's just like you buy gasoline, right? You go to wherever the gasoline is cheapest, not many people care about the brand of the gasoline. The problem for farmers is that if there's a bumper crop, if they grow too many bananas in one year, what happens to the price of bananas?
It goes down.
It's gonna go down.
It goes down and they don't earn much money. And then another year, there might be some kind of crop failure. There's not enough bananas. And what happens to the price of bananas?
It increases.
Right. So just straightforward supply and demand. So the fair trade system pays farmers like a fair wage, regardless of the price of the commodity. So it gives them some stability and some fairness. That's why it's called fair trade. So let's see how popular sales of fair trade labeled coffee and bananas were. So if we're talking about coffee, you've got the first column, which is 1999, millions of euros. In 2004, 5 years later, again, millions of euros. Which country has experienced the greatest increase in sales of fair trade coffee?
Which year?
Yep.
Switzerland?
Coffee. We're talking about coffee. Which
Switzerland.
country?
UK.
Yeah, UK. And what was the increase, roughly speaking?
— 150 times.
100%.
150 times.
Whoa, that's a big discrepancy. Okay, so from 1.5 to 20, how do we figure out what the size of the increase is? How do we describe this increase? Because if you just say it went up from 1.5 to 20, that's not going to be sufficient. You need to say how many times it went up or what percent it went up. So double, triple, quadruple, how many times? When my brain goes on the fritz, for example, in a high stress situation, like on a test, I just use my fingers. Okay.
80 times maybe.
1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, 9, 10.5, 12, 13.5, 15, 16.5, 18, 19.5. So 8 times, right? Increased 8 times? No, that doesn't make sense. 900%, right? Or 700%?
Yeah, you can say 900%.
Oops. Let's try that again. Okay, so if something goes, see, this is why I need to use my fingers. 1.5 to 3 equals 100% growth, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
if something doubles in size, that's 100% increase. So then we just go 3 to 4.5 equals,
200.
and we're at 200. So then the next value is going to be 6.
6, 7.5. Okay.
9,
9.
12, 700%, 13.5. And if I make a mistake, please let me know. 800%, 15, 900%, 16.5, 1,000%. Oh my God, where are we going? Okay. 18, 1,100%, 19.5. So we're at just over 1,200% increase. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So increase 12 times, 1,200% increase. Okay. How about Switzerland? What kind of growth did it experience in terms of fair trade coffee sales?
Double.
Doubled. So that's 100% growth. Right? If something doubles, that is 100% increase. How would you describe the growth in Denmark?
20%?
Oh, be careful.
No, sir, it's 1.8 to 2.
100%.
No.
So Denmark is going from 1.8 to 2. This is where we have to be careful because this looks like something that it's not. If you had 0.8 to 1, what would be the increase?
20%.
No.
0.2.
2.
0.2.
Oh, you said the other day.
20%.
It is not 20% growth. So the formula for percentage change is, first of all, find the difference, and 2, divide the first number in the comparison by the difference from step 1. Okay, so first step, find the difference. What's the difference between 0.8 and 1?
1.8 and 1 and 2.
0.2.
0.2.
Step 2, it's 0.2,
1.8.
not
Oh,
1.8.
yeah.
By
We're just
8.
doing this one here. It's the same as 2 over 8, same as 1 over
1/4.
4.
which is what percentage?
25.
40. Oh,
It's
25%.
25% increase. Now, I want to show you something. And this is why you have to be careful. Let's say it had gone down. So we're not talking about Denmark just yet. We're talking about this example, 0.8 to 1. So this is the one we just did. It's 25% increase. But let's say it went in the other direction. And I'm going to show you why you need to be careful. Okay, so we follow the same formula. What's our difference?
0.2.
It's the same difference. But in this case, we're doing 0.2 divided by
1.
1, because it's the first number in our comparison. In this case, the first number is the 1. So we're reversing the order of the comparison. So if you divide 0.2 into 1, you get, you'll see it better if I do this.
20.
75.
Oh, that's a big
Fine.
discrepancy. Yeah, it's same as 1 over 5, 20%, right? So the 0.2 over 1.0 is the same as 2 over 10, which is 1 over 5, which is 20% decrease. Is anyone confused at this point?
So in the last, what exactly you did? Like, if you write down the complete figure instead of this 0.2, like, and divided by, because our figure was 1.8
So
to
we're
2.
not talking about Denmark yet. We're going to get to Denmark in just a second. I use this example based on an answer that someone gave because that's what they were thinking of. Does everyone see how this works though? How 0.8 to 1 is a 25% increase. But if you go in the opposite direction from 1 to 0.8, it's a 20% decrease. Okay. So another simple example of exactly the same thing. Let's say a product costs $50 and the price goes up to $75. What percentage of a price increase was this?
50%.
Yeah.
50%.
Right? Because the difference is 25. The difference between 50 and 75 is 25, and 25 over 50 is half. But let's say there's a sale on instead, and it goes from 75 to $50. How much is the sales discount?
32%.
33%. Yeah.
Because again, our difference is 25, but this time we have to divide 25 into 75, which is the first number in our comparison, and that's a third. Okay. Same numbers, different direction, very different result. So let's go back to Denmark.
So yeah, basically, whenever you get a higher figure at the beginning, means it's a discount.
Yes, because it's decreasing. Or a decrease. I'm just, because we were talking about sales prices, so I could have said decrease. So let's look at Denmark, where we're going from 1.8 to 2. So step 1, find the difference. Okay, what's the difference? I'm just going to use the absolute signs, 1.8 minus 2. The absolute signs just mean that we don't care whether it's positive or negative. Okay, what's the difference between 1.8 and 2?
0.2.
0.2. Then 2, divide the first number in the comparison by the difference from step 1. Okay, what's the first number in our comparison?
1.8.
Yeah, so we've got 0.2 over 1.8. And if you want to just get rid of the fractions, you can just do 2 over 18. It's exactly the same thing. It's often easier to see.
1 over 9.
1 over 9. Don't worry about changing it to a percentage. I mean, you can if you want to, but you can just leave it as 1/9. It decreased by 1/9.
So if you want a percentage, then we have to multiply with 100, right?
Well, you'd have to divide.
Don't we multiply with 100 also to get the
Oh.
percentage?
Okay, so walk me through it. Walk me through what you want to do.
That is 0.2 divided by 1.8 multiplied by 100. So this is the complete formula, isn't it?
So what goes into 100 9 times?
900?
What?
No,
Sorry.
1/9 of 100.
Mhm.
100.
Ten.
This you might be able to figure it. It's not too hard. It's not 10%. It's a little more than 10%.
Yeah.
What times 9 is very close to 100? So one number away.
11 maybe.
Yeah. 11 times 9 is 99. That's 11%. Okay, so does this one make sense?
I'm not clear with how that you got 11%. I'm clear up to 1/9,
Mhm.
but I don't know how that you came up with 11%.
Well, 1/9 is the same as, well, what's a ninth of 100? Because it doesn't matter what we use, but the base is 100. So if this number were a half, right? How do you go from a half to 50%? Let's say that our end result in the last question, let's say it had been 1/2. So how do you go from a half to 50%? What calculation did you perform?
So it is like half of 100. So we say it's 50%.
Half of 100, right? It's always going to be that fraction out of 100. So if your fraction had been a quarter, then it would be a quarter of 100.
It's 25%.
Right. So in this case, we've got 1/9 of 100. So you got to do some mental math here. You can use your fingers. What goes into 100 9 times? So 10 times 9 is 90, so that's too small. 12 times 9 is 108, that's too big. So 11. It's a little bit higher, but 11 times 9 is 99.
Got it. Thank you, Anne.
Okay. This takes practice. You got to do a bunch of these to wrap your head around how this works. Right? If you're not doing it frequently, you're just going to forget. Yep.
Excuse me, what is the difference we just did here and we did before?
Well, we did Denmark 1.8
Yep.
to 2, which was
Yep.
11% increase. The example we did earlier was this one,
Yeah.
0.8 to 1.
So, okay, so it's this one is 0.8 to 1.
Yes,
So that is 1.8 to 2. Okay.
that's right. This is just easier to see. It's an easier example,
Yeah.
but this is the one that's in the actual graph. So Denmark is an 11% increase. You're not going to need to do this for all of these, but you need to know how to do this so you can talk about the percentage increase. And always remember the words roughly, approximately, about. Okay, what about Belgium? This is an easy one.
70%.
70% increase. Okay, and you're also only need to go in one direction. You only need to go from 99 to 2004. You're not going to need to work backwards. Okay, so it's not as hard as the first example that we saw. And Sweden, that's the one that we saw here.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about meaningful changes, right? Denmark, like just here, the numbers are bigger, 1.8 to 2. But then if you look at Sweden, their growth rate was higher. This is not just some random scenario that I'm talking about. If you ever watch the investor show like Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, they're very interested in percentage growth, much more so than absolute terms. Just as a super quick example, let's say your business makes $200,000. And let's say your business made $200,000 last year and it goes to $250,000 this year. And let's say someone else has a similar business, but they went from $100,000 last year to $150,000 this year. Which business is more interesting for an investor? So as a general rule, sorry, say again?
The second one, 1,000 to 150.
Yeah, investors are interested in the business that's growing faster because they're going to get their money back faster, right? So this business experienced how much growth in 1 year? Yeah, 50% growth. And how much growth did the first business experience?
25.
25%.
Right. So that makes this one more interesting, even though it's $50,000 difference. It's the exact same absolute difference in both cases. You can use this terminology if you want to. You can say in absolute terms, and you can say in relative terms if you want to. You can say proportionately, proportionate, or proportionate growth, proportionately larger. So proportionately, Sweden purchased more coffee, more Fairtrade coffee between 2004 and 1999. Okay. Okay, now let's look at bananas. Okay, tell me about bananas in the UK.
3% almost. Not 3%, three-folds.
A threefold increase? What percentage would that be?
Three-folds mean.
And that's an easy, that by the way is great terminology. A threefold increase, a twofold increase, a fourfold, fivefold, sixfold, sevenfold, eightfold increase. Super
300.
simple to remember. Yes. Sorry, what percentage?
300.
Okay. If something doubles, let's say something goes from $100 to $200, so it doubled in price.
Yes.
What was
100%.
but that's 100% increase. If something goes from 100 to $300, yes, it tripled in price. But what was the percentage increase?
50?
200%.
Oh, 200%. Sorry, here in 200. Yeah.
About 200.
Just remember, doubling means 100% increase, not a 200% increase. Don't let that fool you. Just because it says double doesn't mean it's 200. So UK, what was the percentage growth?
200%?
Yes, and we're going to say just over 200% growth.
Jan, what is this threefold increase? You said threefold increase, fourfold increase? I'm not familiar
Oh.
with that word.
Threefold increase just means it tripled, because it did triple.
Okay.
Sales tripled. Sales saw a threefold increase. Sales saw just over 200% growth. And don't ever say a growth. Okay? A growth means a tumor. That's cancer. You just say growth. Okay, what about Switzerland?
More than fivefold?
Yep.
400%?
Yep. So what's the percentage?
400?
You can do this one exactly very easily.
Fivefold.
100?
450% in.
450%.
Right. So do you see a pattern here? If
Yes.
something doubles, it's 100%. If something triples, it's 200%. So if you know that something has gone up 5.5 times, that's 450% increase.
So that is fivefold, right? Fivefold.
5.5fold.
5.5-fold. You can say an over 5-fold increase if you want to put it that way. How about Denmark?
%50. Almost 50%.
Almost 50%.
No, it's
Whoa,
0.4.
It's 0.6 all the way to 4.
Again, I think 450. Around
But
450.
make the numbers easier. If 0.6 is messing you up, change that to 6 and then change 4 to 40. So if it were 6, so this is the exact same thing as 6 to 40. I think you can see it clearer that way.
360.
Right, 6 times 6 is 36. So increased over 6 times over a 6-fold increase, almost 7-fold increase, right?
Right.
It saw a nearly 7-fold increase is another way you could say this. An increase of how much percent?
360 maybe?
600, almost 700.
600% of nearly 600%. Is that right?
500%. Nearly 500%, I get.
Because if it's over a 6-fold increase, let's say if it were a 7-fold increase, that would be 600%. So since it's nearly 7-fold, it's going to be nearly 600%. If you want to verify, then the long way to do it is 0.6 to 1.2 equals 100%. So then we keep going by 0.6. Then we've got 1.8 equals 200%. 6, 12, 18, 2.4 equals 300%. 3 equals 400%. 3.6 equals 500%. And then if it went all the way up to 4.2, it would be 600%. So an increase of nearly 600% because it only goes up to 4. Okay, but 6 times 7 is 42. So that's why we can say it's a nearly 7-fold increase. Okay, then we've got Belgium, 1.8 to 2. Belgium fell. So that's definitely a pattern that you should pick up on. There's only 2 things that fell here, Belgium and Sweden for bananas. Okay, so what happened in Belgium? We've got 1.8 to 1.
Decrease 80%.
Let's verify, let's do the math. What's our difference?
0.9.
0.8.
8, and then 0.8 over 1.8. What does that give you? That's our first number in the comparison.
1.
Same as 8 over 18.
One over two.
It's not quite, but we've got 4 over 9, right? 8 over 18 is the same as 4 over 9. So approximately, right? We don't need, we can say roughly, what is it? Dropped by just under
0.5.
4 over 9 is what percent, roughly?
44%.
Okay, so let's say just under 50%, right? Okay, and just visually, like if you round this to 2, you're going to get 50%, but we're not at 2, so it dropped by just under 50%. And then we've got Sweden, went from 2 to 0.9.
100%.
Okay, so first step in our comparison, find the difference. What is the difference?
0.9.
1.1.
1.1.
1.1.
1.1.
And then we've got to do this over our first number in the comparison, and that gives us, again, don't take out a calculator, just what is it approximately?
55.
100.
So
Oh no, 1.
just
50.
dropped by just over or under 50%?
Over.
Over.
Okay, so you don't need a calculator. In my experience, this kind of math is always going to be pretty easy. You're always going to get a nice round value as long as you use the words under, over, approximately, just under, just over. It's always going to be something like 25%, a third, 50%, 75%. When you round, it's going to be a nice round number. Nice easy value rather. So we've got our numbers now. So how are these significant? Let me just get rid of all them. Let me just copy this stuff and get rid of all of our calculations and just leave the raw numbers. Okay, so UK is 200% increase. I'm gonna get rid of this stuff. Switzerland, 450% increase. Denmark, nearly 600% increase.
Sir, I think you leave this because when we review, we will.
Sorry?
I think don't delete it, leave it there.
Yeah,
For
so
us
I
to-
copied it. I copied it. Belgium, just under 50%, and just under 50%. I'm going to put minus. I'm going to put minus here so I don't forget. Oops, that's bananas. And then let me get our coffee numbers. So again, UK is, were these numbers right? Did somebody check these with a calculator? Let me just, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.59.
That's
Just over. So again, I'm not deleting the original, I'm just copying this. Denmark. Okay, Switzerland. Switzerland was, bless you, 100% increase. 100%.
thank you. Thank you.
Then we had Belgium, and then we had Sweden. So Belgium was 70% increase, and Sweden was a 25% increase. Now let's get rid of all this other stuff. Okay. But you practice a little bit doing this, you're going to be able to do this instantly. It's only a two-step formula. Find the difference, take the first number in your comparison, and divide by that difference. If you're ever stuck, I used to do this on exams all the time. If you're having trouble remembering a formula or which way the formula goes, make a really, really simple example. Like that example with the sale price. If something increases from 50 to 75 bucks, and then conversely, if something drops from 75 to 50, use an example where you can easily do it in your head. And then you can easily come up with the formula to match that example that you can do in your head. So if it goes from 50 to $75, that's a 50% increase. You know, so you took that difference of 25 over the first number 50. When you go from 75 to 50, if something goes on sale, again, you've got that same $25 difference, but this time it's over 75. 25 over 75, 1/3. It's a 1/3 or 33% discount. And then you can use the exact same formula for kind of messier numbers where you need to do the calculation. Okay, so what are the patterns that now we can talk about, now we can mention? Olga.
Yes,
What
yes.
what is noteworthy in the coffee table?
Like it doesn't like it's not worthy to mention it, or
No,
what
you
do
have
mean?
to. You can't ignore anything that they give you. You can't just say, oh, I'm just going to focus on this and ignore the rest. You have to talk about it all.
Okay.
But just as a broad pattern, see, in your
Yes.
general overview, you're only mentioning the big patterns that you're going to talk about in detail. So they're giving you two tables, very simple structure for this one. It's going to be two body paragraphs. First body paragraph is going to be about coffee, second one about bananas. What is noteworthy about coffee that you can mention in the general overview?
Mhm. Is well, I will say that Sweden has well, no, UK, like it's out of it's just out of, it's, I don't know the word that I should say, like it's out of,
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just, you don't have time to think. It's just, what do you notice? What are the big patterns? So whenever you're approaching these graphs, talk about the most obvious noticeable things, the biggest increase or the smallest increase, the biggest drop, the smallest drop, things that didn't change, things that are outliers that have weird values. Those are the noticeable things.
okay, UK shows really high, incredible, higher percentage increase.
Mm-hmm. By
And
far. By far.
by far
Yep.
from the rest of the other countries.
Yes.
And
So
so
not too
yeah.
interesting. What about bananas? Bananas is where you can make this contrast between absolute and relative.
Bananas is Belgium and Sweden has a, I don't know, yeah, I don't
Decrease?
know, decrease.
Yep. Which country saw the biggest growth in absolute terms for bananas?
Denmark.
No, in absolute terms.
In absolute terms,
Mm-hmm.
the biggest growth, yeah, it's, in absolute, it's sorry, Switzerland.
Nope. In absolute terms just means in terms of the raw numbers.
Okay, so it's yeah, they sell UK. Okay, 47. Yeah, okay, 47 UK.
Yeah, so by far in absolute terms the UK sold the most fair trade bananas. But then we can make a contrast. See, for the coffee side, it's UK for both absolute and relative terms, by far. The biggest increase in fair trade coffee sales in terms of absolute sales and in terms of percentage growth. But for bananas, you've got a nice contrast here. You've got the UK again, which has the biggest increase in absolute terms. But then other countries have bigger increases in relative terms, don't they? Right?
Okay, okay, now I got it. Yeah, like Switzerland, and it has in relative terms.
Yeah, and Denmark as well, right? 450,
Yeah.
600% growth over the period of the study. Okay. Let's have a look at a model response for this one.
Okay.
So the table provides data about purchases of Fairtrade coffee and bananas in 2 different years in 5 nations. Generally speaking, Fairtrade coffee sales increased across the board, while banana sales rose only in the UK, Sweden, and Denmark. So it's a pretty simple general overview. In terms of Fairtrade coffee sales, they rose in all 5 countries, right? You start with a very general description. The UK skyrocketed more than 1,000% between 1999 to 2004, from 1.5 million euros to 20 million euros, while Switzerland's doubled from 3 million to 6 million over the same period. Coffee sales in Belgium increased 70%, but Denmark's and Sweden's increased much less, by 10 and 20% respectively. Okay, so this covers in 1, 2, 3 sentences all of this business. With regard to Fairtrade banana purchases, these rose in 3 countries and fell in 2. Notice again, it starts with a very general topic sentence, and this topic sentence makes it very easy for the reader to follow. Okay, we know exactly what's coming in the rest of the body paragraph. As with coffee sales, banana sales in the UK also ranked first in total sales volume. So total sales volume is another way of saying in absolute terms, increasing from 15 million in 1999 to 47 million euros in 2004. Switzerland sales rose dramatically as well, rising by 450% from 1 to 5.5 million over the period of the study. That being said, Denmark experienced the highest proportional sales increase. So proportional sales increase is the same as in relative terms, of nearly 600%, growing from 0.6 to 4 million euros. In contrast, Belgium's and Sweden's sales fell by roughly 50% between 1999 and 2004. So those were lumped together.
Mr. John, in first paragraph, while it's written, while banana sales rose only in the UK, Sweden, and Denmark, but the Sweden didn't increase, rather it fell, decreased like 2.9.
Sorry, where?
In the first paragraph, the very first paragraph, the last line.
Sweden. Yeah, you caught a mistake. Generally speaking, Fairtrade sales, while banana sales rose only in the UK, Sweden. No, it should be UK, Switzerland, and Denmark. That's what it should be. Okay, thank you for catching that.
Okay.
Let me just correct that. There we go. Okay, and I would even add the word, do one more thing in here, by approximately. I would add approximately in here. Um, 70 coffee sales in Belgium increased 70%, but Denmark's and Sweden's, no, that is 1.8. We said 2, right? By approximately 10% and 20% respectively. Yep. Because that was, we said 11%, right? What did we say for Denmark?
11%.
Denmark, we said 11%. And then Sweden, we said 25%. That's fine. He lumped them in together, 10% and 20% respectively. Okay, easy, hard, makes sense. So you have to be comfortable doing these kinds of comparisons, right? Because otherwise, what are you going to say about this stuff? You're just going to describe it from left to right, and that way there's no meaningful comparison. This is the way to do it. I'd like you all to take out a piece of paper and a pencil and write this out. Okay, I just want to time you to see how long this takes. Because people tell me that, oh, I don't have time to rewrite these Band 9 models.
Oh, the same thing you mean?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
This is a small
No.
one. We were not talking about
No.
part 2. Like,
No creativity, just write it out. Don't rush. Whatever you do, don't rush. You can't learn how to write if you're rushing. It is impossible. Okay. In the optimum writing process that we talk about, the first step is you take models of what you're trying to learn how to write and you copy them out by hand. You don't retype them, you copy it out by hand. So I'd like you to do that right now. And I'm just curious how long it takes.
So copy by hand these things, the tables
Yes.
of the okay.
Yep. It's not long, it shouldn't take you more than a few minutes. Just don't rush. That's all. In this document here, I don't really want to change the page, but there's an outline on the final page on page 6 that gives just the data. And you can write your version based only on the point form version. So that would be the second step. The first step is modeling. So you're just copying what's there.
so we have to write exactly what we like copy.
Exactly, identical. Don't change a single word. Just change Sweden to Switzerland and add approximately there. But the purpose is to learn how to write by copying good examples of writing. If you're learning a sport, if you're learning how to play golf, you copy Tiger Woods. You don't mess with it. You just copy exactly what the guy's doing.
So we have to write our version, isn't it? Like
Not yet. The first step is a carbon copy of the original.
Yeah, that we did.
Okay, so you're finished now?
Yeah, I finished quite long. I texted you.
Done.
I
So
think after Nazish I did. Yeah.
okay, so Nazish 8:24, so that took you, let's say, 9 minutes.
Yes, 9 minutes.
Dr. Zuby, another 9 minutes. Olga, 10 minutes. The second step in the process is to take a point form outline of this. Either make your own, or I provide these in many cases here. Then you write your own version based only on the point form version, and then you compare to the original. You'll discover things about language and about grammar. You look at the way you describe something, and then you look at the way the original author described something, and you think about those differences. Our purpose here is to increase what you notice about the language, because noticing is always the first step. If you don't notice something, it might as well not exist, right? And you don't have to copy it just once. You might need to copy it several times if that gives you a better feeling for it. You should read it out loud. When you're reading it out loud, look at the punctuation. Lots of people have issues with punctuation. Punctuation is very important. It chops up these really long sentences into more manageable chunks. Where you're pausing as you read out loud, that's probably where you need punctuation. It's a good speaking activity at the same time. In terms of speaking, very broadly, very generally, the difference between band 7 and up in speaking and lower than band 7 in speaking is fluency. It's not accent, it's fluency. And fluency is understood as stress timing or syllable timing. When people are learning a language, their speech tends to be syllable timed. So they're speaking like this in a choppy way where every syllable takes about the same time. Okay? Because the words are not flowing to your mouth very quickly. Okay, when you're learning something new, whether it's riding a bike, driving a car, speaking a foreign language, you're not fluent at it initially because you have to think too much. You have to think about every single word that you're using. You have to think about the grammar. If you're driving, you have to think about checking the mirrors. You have to think about checking your blind spots. Right? It's only when that becomes automatic that we can say, a fluent driver. It's the same with language. When you are so familiar with the words that they're basically that the flow of information from your brain to your mouth is basically instant. That's fluency. So when people are learning a language, their speech is very choppy. As they get more fluent, and this is band 7 and higher on IELTS, their speech we call stress timed. Okay? So you're not pausing at every syllable, you're pausing at natural breaks in the sentence, which are usually where you see the punctuation. Like if I read right here, in terms of Fairtrade coffee sales, they rose in all 5 countries. The UK skyrocketed more than 1,000% between 1999 to 2004, from 1.5 million to 20 million euros, while Switzerland's doubled from 3 million to 6 million over the same period. Notice that the punctuation, that's the only place where I paused. If I keep going, coffee sales in Belgium increased 70%, but Denmark's and Sweden's increased much less, by approximately 10% and 20% respectively. Right? So fluent speech pauses only at punctuation. That's what the examiner's listening for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In IELTS, no one checks the reading skills. I mean, no one gives you the paragraph and get you to read in front of them, are they?
No, but this improves your fluency. You're getting a sense of the rhythm of the language.
Okay.
Right, they're not testing your fluency. Absolutely, yeah, they're not asking you to read aloud. But it's good practice for the rhythm of the language. Then when you're reading your own work afterwards, this practice is going to help you identify the places where you need punctuation.
Okay, sometimes maybe they check while we do this speaking test, right?
Yes, when you are speaking, that's what pronunciation is. Pronunciation doesn't refer to accent. They don't care about your accent. They don't care if you have a strong German accent or a strong Russian accent. They care about a few things. Clarity. Okay, if the accent interferes with the listener's ability to understand what you're saying, that's no good. But a heavy accent doesn't necessarily do that. Research shows that what's more important than your accent is the fluency of how you're saying a sentence, the rhythm of the sentence. where you're pausing naturally. That's called blends. If the blends are accurate, people don't have any trouble understanding what you're saying, even if some of the words are garbled or mispronounced.
Sorry, John, how you say that word? Blend?
Blend. Like,
How?
a blend, a blender?
Yeah, the
You're
blend.
making a smoothie?
Yeah.
Yeah, blend, B-L-E-N-D.
Okay, thank you.
So they're looking for three things: blends, stresses, and intonation. Blends means you're saying long chunks without pausing, without chopping them up unnaturally. So I'm not saying the tables provide data about purchases of Fairtrade coffee and bananas. No, the tables provide data about purchases of Fairtrade coffee and bananas in 2 different years in 5 nations. Okay. So the whole thing basically is read as one fluent chunk. Yes, I do have small pauses in some spaces like this, but for the most part, the whole thing is read straight through. I'm not pausing in odd places. Stresses means that every clause has keywords, the most important meaning-carrying words that are stressed, that are emphasized. Stress means emphasis. And everyone does this naturally in their own language. We emphasize the most important words in a sentence. We do this because if your delivery is completely flat, we call that monotone. If I'm talking like a robot like this, your brain doesn't know what to pay attention to. It doesn't know which words are more important, which words are less important. So we emphasize the keywords to give that signal to the brain, oh yeah, these are the really important keywords in the sentence. And intonation is just like falling tone, rising tone, which signals like a question. Do you like it? That's rising tone to signal a question. Okay, but the most important one is blends. So this helps.
So can we use slang while speaking in the exam, the real exam?
Sure.
We don't have to be very formal. Like,
think of it as a conversation with an Uber driver. Okay? It's just a conversation. It's not a TED Talk.
So Jan, you mean pronunciation matters at the IELTS here?
Enunciation matters. When they say pronunciation, they don't mean accent. They mean, first of all, clarity. So if your accent interferes with my ability to understand what you're saying, that's a problem. But we're not looking for people that have a British accent, American accent, Australian, Canadian. That does not matter at all.
What's the other word you said? Not pronunciation. Other word, what you said?
Enunciation.
Enunciation.
That means clarity.
Okay. So now back home, like we used to the UK accent, we say banana. Here you said banana. So
Bananas.
yeah.
Bananas.
So yeah, we say banana. So will that matter?
That kind of stuff is considered holistically. A single word won't make any difference. A couple words. I mean, the interview's, it's long enough, right? You've got 3 parts, roughly 15 minutes long. You can say a lot of things over that 15 minutes. Right? So a couple words mispronounced is not going to make much of a difference. They're looking for patterns. They're looking for systematic problems. And they're also more closely considering the last part of the examination, not the first part. They know that people need time to warm up. Okay, so very often the way people are speaking towards the end of the interview, their level is much higher than at the beginning. That's the same with the school system, with Ontario schools. Teachers are supposed to more heavily weight most recent and most consistent performance. They're not supposed to weight rather let's say you're taking English class, you're taking my English class. I'm not going to weight the essays that you wrote at the beginning of the semester the same as I weight the essays that you wrote at the end of the semester. The ones at the end of the semester are more recent, and that should show your true ability. Right? So when you see examples of like a well-written task 1 response or a task 2 response, read it out loud. You need that language input through as many senses as possible. There's a very strong like hand-brain connection. When you say it out loud, you're connecting your ears, you're connecting your mouth, you're reading it, you're using your eyes. You're trying to get all the senses involved. Not sure about smell and taste, not suggesting you eat the paper or anything, but as many senses as possible involved in the process will improve how well you internalize the language. Right? Remember, in a normal situation for your own language, you're listening to that language from the time you're in your mommy's belly. You're listening for many years before you ever pick up a pencil and use it to write anything. All right, so listening is primary. Just reading silently is great, but it won't give you the same kind of experience of the language as hearing it. And just know, when you're reading it in terms of where should I pause or whatever, try and read it straight through and only pause where you see punctuation. Right? With regard to Fairtrade banana purchases, pause. These rose in 3 countries and fell in 2. As with coffee sales, banana sales in the UK also ranked first in total sales volume, increasing from 15 million in 1999 to 47 million in 2004. Switzerland's sales rose dramatically as well, rising by 450% from 1 million to 5.5 million over the period of the study. That being said, Denmark experienced the highest proportional sales increase of nearly 600%, growing from 0.6 million to 4 million euros. In contrast, Belgium's and Sweden's sales fell by roughly 50% between 1999 and 2004. Okay. So the natural pauses are where the punctuation is. And I think a lot of you are experiencing problems with your sentence structure because you're not hearing these pauses. You aren't clear about where clauses and phrases end and where they begin. And it's the auditory process that has a big impact on your understanding of that.
Yeah, you just described exactly my problem for reading. Exactly the same one. True. I just want to finish the sentence where the full stop is. Period. Yeah. So I don't really emphasize or pay attention. Where should I stop? I just want to read it straight away.
That's also why I always tell you to read your work out loud for the editing process. Your eyes are too fast, right? Yeah. Like if you read the reading comprehension guide that's included in the course, for speed reading, right, you're trying to suppress this tendency to use your mouth. Like we used to laugh at people, like when I was a kid, kids are mean. So when we saw kids reading, and some kids you see their lips moving, right? We used to laugh at them because that's a very slow process. If you have to, in your head, read every word out loud before you understand what it means. We learn to suppress that and your reading speed shoots up. And you need that for speed reading. So when you're only using your eyes can jump from key idea to key idea because your logical brain is only interested in meaning. It's ignoring all these words that don't carry much meaning. Articles, prepositions, helper verbs, punctuation. None of that matters very much for meaning. So it just jumps from keyword to keyword to keyword. That's no good for editing. You have to read it out loud. That forces you to slow down, and it also causes you to hear the rhythm of the sentence.
Okay.
It's the sentence structure that's the biggest problem for many people. It's the lack of sentence structure, rather. Right? It's run-ons, it's fragments. These are all issues that you have to fix before you take this exam. You should be crystal clear on what a fragment is, on what a run-on sentence is. You should not be going into this exam with any of those kinds of issues. That means there's a lot of other problems going on too. Okay. Verb tenses are like a separate matter. Everyone focuses on verb tenses. I'm trying to get you to zoom out a little bit and look at the bigger picture, which is the sentence structure. Okay. Your assignment is to follow this process. You've done the first part, which is modeling. And let me just see here. So Ivan, you finished at 8:30, but did you start at 8:15?
Yes.
Ivan?
Yes.
Oh, you did. Okay, so you started at 8:15, so it took you 15 minutes to rewrite it?
Yeah, I spent almost 11 minutes.
11 minutes. Okay. Kelly, how about you?
14 minutes.
11. Oksana?
Maybe 11 minutes.
Okay, so we got a range from 9 to 14 minutes. So let's say 11.5 minutes on average. This is, let's say, 2/3 of the length of task 2. So if you do the same thing for the task 2 essays, you're looking at about 15 minutes, roughly. Okay, that's not a lot of time. So 15 minutes for task 2. Then you would take the outline, either make your own outline or use the outline that I provide, and then write your own version. Since all the thinking is done for you, since you're already familiar with it, I don't think it's going to take you much more than about, let's say, 25 minutes to do the to write the second version, which is based on the outline. Let's say you spend another 10 minutes on critiquing it yourself, and then you do your writing and give yourself 40 minutes. So we are looking at 15 minutes, 25 minutes, so that's 40, 50 minutes for a critique. That's an hour and a half. So that's an hour and a half to do this process for task 2. And probably about an hour to do this process for task 1. Is that too long?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Nobody in the history of the world has learned how to write well quickly. It does not work that way. Okay. You have to treat this like it's a part-time job. Some people love doing this. I've got quite a few students who, they're not just interested in passing IELTS, they're interested in being good writers. Band 7 literally means you are a competent writer. That's why it's so hard to get. Anything under Band 7 is intermediate level English. Band 7 and higher is advanced. Nothing in your writing can cause confusion. Not the ideas, not the pronouns, not the vocab, not the grammar. If any of those things cause confusion, you don't get a band 7 in that category. Okay. If you're a doctor, I sincerely hope that you feel an internal need to get up to band 7 level in your writing, right? Because if you make a mistake when you're writing something up for a patient, they could die. So it's critically important that your writing be at least at a band 7 level.
So
Right?
we don't write essays of the patient, we just write medicine.
We write only prescription.
Yeah.
That's words, few words and numbers.
But you write prescriptions. You might have to write reports if a government agency asks for one. Like, for example, for child abuse cases, you might have to write a report. Right? There are situations where you might be required to do a write-up, and there could be serious consequences arising from confusion. But just, I mean, out of professional pride, band 7 doesn't mean that you're getting an A in English. That's like you're getting a B in English for band 7. Okay, this is not, you're not a professional writer. It just means you're competent in the sense that what you're writing does not cause confusion for the reader. That's really what you're aiming for.
So, Jan, you mean like if we practice doing models often, like we can reach up to band 7?
It works. It's a technique that legitimately works. I used it when I had this idea of becoming a writer when I was a teenager. This is what I did. I sat there with books by my heroes in a coffee shop and I rewrote key passages that I thought were beautiful. Rewrote them by hand. I had little notebooks that were filled with these kinds of passages. And what you find happens is that you start internalizing the language. Not just the vocab, but I mean the rhythm of the sentences. You really start to pick it up and it's super noticeable. Right? If you don't have your own good internal rhythm of doing this, and nobody does when it's not their own language, like you're always modeling something. You can't help it. We're always mimicking. Like that's the human condition where our brains have these mirror neurons that can't help but mimic. Right? That's how we learn things. That's how we sympathize and empathize. It's through mirror neurons. Right? So if you're looking at bad models of English, like there's a lot of essays online, a lot of IELTS essays online that are poorly written. Right? They're not written by former examiners or current examiners. They're just written by people who say they're IELTS teachers or their students or who knows who. They're not well written. If you use those as models, you're going to copy the mistakes. When you find models that are written by legitimate sources, that's what you have to learn from. You can't learn anything without mimicking effective models. Any sport you want to play, you're going to be mimicking people who do that sport well. Right? When I was learning how to drive, I took one lesson. The reason I only took one lesson is because our car actually broke down on the way for me to take the driving lesson. Right, I was experiencing engine trouble. The examiner wouldn't get in it. He identified the problem and he said, you got to find another car. So we went to one of these driving school people and he said, can we just use your car for the lesson? He goes, okay, sure, I'll just charge you $50 for it. And I said, okay, great. He said, do you want a free lesson? And I was like, nah, I think I'm okay. My dad's been teaching me. He goes, you know what? I really think you should take me up on this lesson. So I said, okay, fine. My gut said, just listen to the guy. We drove around and what he said to me made all the difference. He gave me one hint. He said, you're looking in the wrong place. He said, you're looking way too close. He said, experienced drivers, he said, inexperienced drivers look right in front of the car. Right? Because you're afraid of hitting something. You're afraid of some animal or a kid or a ball or whatever rolling out in front of the car and you running over it. But he said, experienced drivers try and predict danger much farther away. So they look far away. That one piece of advice made all the difference. My driving changed completely as soon as he told me to do that. I was much more relaxed because when you're looking further away, you can see danger coming much sooner, right? You've got much more distance to prepare yourself for anything that might happen. So it's having access to good models that help you improve your skills rather than having bad models. So the model that I was operating on was no model at all. Nobody had talked to me about this. So I was just looking where I thought people were supposed to look. Right? It's not that I was actually modeling myself on someone, but I was modeling myself on a bad idea of how to do something. So you're modeling regardless of whether you want to or not. You've got some kind of mental template of what proper English is supposed to look like, but in many cases, that template that you have in your mind is not the correct one. Right? So you have to unlearn that and learn the proper way to do things. And it's not going to happen overnight. I keep adding more of these Band 9 models to the course. There's at least 75. You're welcome to go through them and follow this process for all of them. I don't think you need to do that much, but the ability to pick up a language differs quite a bit. And I'm convinced that it has a lot to do with people's ears, with people's their ability to pick up tone, their ability to detect differences in rhythm. I think people with musical training pick up language much more easily. People who have experience speaking multiple languages pick up new languages more easily because their ears are attuned to looking for these kinds of patterns, for detecting these kinds of rhythmic differences.
Yeah, I think the same, Ian, because I'm deaf. I cannot hear it very well. That's why.
You
No,
mean
you know what?
deaf or tone deaf?
Deaf. My son, he plays music and he teaches by himself, right? So he's super, I don't know the word, very sensitive to the ears.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he plays, ukulele, keyboard, everything, right, by itself. So he learned English as a second language because we came here, he was not even 3, the old one.
Mm-hmm.
And even neighbors, they say, "Oh, Ivan has such a nice English," when he was growing. And he started learning like a second language because he already knew Spanish very well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but even the neighbors, I remember they say, "Oh, he speaks like such a good English," but it's because he has this ability to listen and to mimic very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he learned, but I think it's totally right what you're saying. If you're attentive to these tones and everything, you get a very good. It's you have.
I'll give you a personal example that's kind of the opposite of yours. My youngest son, he's 6 now. He had all kinds of pronunciation issues. His vocabulary development is much delayed compared to his brothers. So my oldest is 9, the youngest is 6. And what we discovered a couple of years ago, we took him to a specialist, and he discovered that he had very narrow ear canals, like very narrow, to the point where his hearing was only about 2/3 of what it should be. right? As soon as we got that diagnosis, we understood exactly what his issues were coming from. So this doctor wanted to perform surgery because this doctor is like one of the top pediatricians who deals with this kind of issue in Ontario. And of course, he wanted to like poke a hole in his ear, right? Which would have caused problems for at least a year every time. Like he would have had to keep his head dry for a year at least. If any water got in there, it could cause an infection. So we said, no, we're gonna get some additional advice. And I actually got some really good advice from a few doctors that were in this course. I had such anxiety about the idea of doing surgery on my baby. So I talked to these other doctors that were in the IELTS course a couple of years ago, and they both said, Jan, just wait. Your kid's really young. In many cases, they simply grow out of it. So we went with that advice. And then when we went for a recheck about a year later, it turned out that his ear canals were completely open and 100% normal. Okay. And now that he's in grade 1, he's catching up very, very quickly. His pronunciation is still off, right? He doesn't speak nearly as clearly as his brother did or as other kids speak in grade 1. But it's the same kind of issue. If you can't hear things properly, you can't model them properly, right? So some people just need way more input than other people because your other senses have to compensate. You have to rely more on your logical mind as opposed to the musicality of the language.
It also proves one another thing, that good doctors don't necessarily need to know very good English. They don't need to write big essays.
Well, this particular doctor, you know, he's an expert in this procedure. He's performed it several tens of thousands of times, as he told us. So, you know that old saying, if you're a hammer, right? If the hammer is your only tool, then that's the only tool you're going to use for every situation that you come across. This guy had one tool in his tool belt. He just really, really, really wanted to perform that procedure on our kid because it's easy for him.
No. No.
So, Jan, can I ask you?
Well, that was great. It's beautiful. It's beautiful that you follow. Yeah, as you said, better follow your feelings, right? What you have the sense to know what is best, and you choose the better.
Well,
That's
also these particular doctors were, one was a pediatrician, the other was a neurologist.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't Google it, right? You asked for good advices, and you took an informed decision, right?
Yeah.
About what was best. Yes.
Yeah, and I was just really fortunate because both these doctors in my class were actually significantly older than this Ontario pediatrician. So they had much more experience. They were actually better doctors than this guy was.
Right. Well, you did really good choice. Very good choice. In time.
In retrospect, yeah, but I mean, it's a very difficult choice because one part of you is going, oh my God, like if this doesn't sort itself out, then it's going to be yet another year of delayed development because he can't hear properly. So if this doesn't sort itself out on its own very quickly, we're all in trouble, or he's in trouble, right? So it worked out for the best, but my point of telling the story is, I just connected this right now based on your story, right? It's the same situation. If you can't hear properly, or if you're not listening to it, if like in a lot of foreign language situations, my high school, we have almost 100% Chinese kids. And I lived in China for almost 2 years, and I saw how the schooling works there. It's heads down. It's just writing, worksheets, almost no talking, not much listening to authentic English. So it's like silent language learning. It doesn't work. You've got these kids who've been doing grammar worksheets for 10 years and their writing is awful. You'd think that if someone did grammar worksheets in any language for 10 years, their writing would be amazing, but it's not. It's crap. It doesn't work. There's no engagement of the other senses. The mouth is not engaged. The ears are not engaged. It's very one-dimensional and it doesn't work.
Yes.
And then you hear about other people, like my friend's dad. He went to China, didn't take lessons. All he took was a dictionary, put it in his back pocket. And he was constantly reading the dictionary, found a girlfriend in China, and his whole education was basically thinking of things he wanted to talk to his girlfriend about. He'd just be reading the dictionary and then practicing, and her job was just to correct him. Right? So orally, he learned the language without writing anything down.
Well, but he has a very good motivation to learn, yeah. That's why.
Yes, right.
Yeah, he has, he wants to talk to the girl, so probably that helps everything, right?
Yeah, and a lot of our students don't have that motivation because in the case of the Chinese community, for example, the Chinese community is so big here in Toronto that you can go your whole life just doing business with other Chinese people, never leave your comfort zone. You never need to speak English, except maybe to say thank you at Starbucks. And you never learn the language. Like I have Chinese friends here who've been living here for over 20 years. Their English is basically hello and goodbye, thank you. They know 3 expressions.
Wow.
And they're very successful business people because
Yes,
all of their
there's
clients
a lot
are, yeah.
That's insane.
It's not just Chinese people. Polish community, the community that I'm from is exactly the same. I know people who've been here. I mean, I've been here for 37 years. I know other people who came here at the same time because a ton of Polish people came here at the same time. Their English is awful because they only talk to other Polish people.
The owners of this house, we rent this house, they're Polish and they don't have very good English. They even told us, the person big, yeah, they don't speak very good English, but they have a lot of houses. They live in Polish, and yeah, they don't have to talk very good English. They hire someone to do the contracts and in English, and yeah. So yeah,
That's it.
true.
So motivation is everything.
Motivation. Yes, motivation is everything. Yes, you're right.
John, I want to ask you just a question before we finish. So step number 1, we copy the model.
At least once.
Step number 2, we outline.
You make your own outline. Yep.
Okay, and this is
and then you write
based on the model?
Based on the outline. So you don't look at the model, you just use your outline to write the same essay that you got the outline from. It's like the oral exercises we often do at the end of class. You just take the outline version, which doesn't have any grammar in it because it's just point form, or it's got minimal grammar. And then you're just trying to rebuild something like the original. It doesn't need to be exact. You're not trying to do 100%. You're also trying to do your own version, but as close to the original as reasonably possible based on your memory, right? Because you've already experienced it several times. You've read it, you've copied it, you've listened to it, you've listened to yourself saying it, you've changed it into an outline. So that's like 4 times that you've seen it already. And now the 5th time you're writing it based on the outline. Then you compare your version to the original. And you go through it sentence by sentence saying, okay, this is what I produced based on this one point. Now let's look at what the original author wrote for that same idea. And you just go through it like that. It'll take you like 10, 15 minutes to do that comparison. You put everything away. And then you write your version, just based on the prompt.
Okay.
Okay. You can space this process out too. Forgetting is a very important part of learning. This has been thoroughly tested. When you give yourself time, when you don't give yourself time, when you do it immediately, it's like you're still mentally rehearsing it. It's harder to maybe wait a day or two or even a week and write that final version. You're going to make more mistakes. But as a result of making those mistakes, this is as long as you're getting feedback. If you're not getting feedback, this is not going to work. But based on those mistakes, looking at those mistakes and revising it is going to strengthen your language skills and your memory. It's an analogous process is if you're studying for a test, let's say in history, and you're going through maybe you've got all your flip cards for all of your historical facts and you've got the dates and things written on them. It's more effective to space out your studying than to cram. What they've discovered is that students who cram do better on a test that's immediately after they've been cramming. But students who space things out have higher levels of long-term memory for those same facts. They might do a little bit less, a little bit worse on that initial test, but their forgetting curve is like this. It's a shallow decline. The people who cram, they do better on the test, but their forgetting curve is like this. They forget almost everything very quickly. So forgetting and then reviewing leads to stronger memories than cramming.
Okay.
Than doing everything all at once immediately. Like I said, this process can't be that fast because you have no way of predicting what you're actually going to get on the exam.
That's right.
Right? So if you do amazing on one of these writing tasks because you wrote your final version immediately after doing this whole process, that's not an accurate representation of your skill level. If I then gave you a completely different topic, your performance would drop.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Don't rush. It doesn't work. The more you rush, the more time you're just wasting.
Okay.
But again, you got to treat this like it's a part-time job, if not a full-time job. All these students, these doctors that I told you about, they were studying 12 to 14 hours a day to pass IELTS.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah, it is insane.
I mean, if I start 12 hours, I don't think I'm going to be able to keep a lot of words in my brain. I'm going to be really exhausted. It will be for me impossible to keep words in my brain.
No, it won't. It's language exposure. That includes reading, it includes listening, it includes reviewing vocab, it includes practicing writing, it includes doing reading comprehension exercises, listening comprehension exercises. It includes reading for pleasure. All those things. All those things that you would do on a normal basis in your native language.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember, people have a lot at stake, right? I mean, if you're a doctor, then how much income are you foregoing by not having your IELTS score, your band 7? It's tens of thousands of dollars a month that you're missing out on income, right?
Correct.
So if I were a doctor, I'd also be doing this from morning till night until I got the score that I needed. With that much at stake, I wouldn't be doing anything else.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree with you. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we are over time. Okay, have a wonderful evening. Let's do Thursday by noon. revisions Friday by noon. I'll post the location and I'll post the video tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. See ya.